few lines.
I'm not sure if everybody can see this graph. This is a graph of inequality. It shows, this is for the United States, and it shows how much of the wealth that's created goes to the top 10%.
Can I pass that around?
Yeah, I guess you could pass it around.
When does it begin and when does it end? When's the beginning?
But I'm going to refer to it several times.
Okay, I just want
Well, let me just hold it up. Okay. It starts over here in 1910, and it goes to 2010. Inequality was relatively high over here. Inequality is very high later. And there was this period when it wasn't that bad, when inequality came down. And here in America, that was basically between 1935 and 1980. Let me just put it up here, because I'm going to refer to it some more. I got this from Mr. Piketty, Thomas Piketty. Now this is not his main book. Thomas Piketty's main book is called Capital in the 21st Century. It's a world-shaking book. It's a bestseller. And the reason it got so important is because he had data, much further, much longer data from many more years back than people have got, than most economists have. His data goes back into the 18th century and forward, of course, all the way to today. So it's pretty hard to argue with him about what happened because he has the data. And so this is, yes?
What's the name of that book you're holding up?
Why Save the Bankers. This is just a collection of Piketty's news articles. And frankly, it's more interesting simply because he wrote it. If he hadn't written Capital in the 21st Century, nobody would care about this book. Capital in the 21st Century is the big book. It's the, you can get it at the Dallas Library, by the way. And it's changing what everybody thinks. I'm going to use this to show, I'm going to tell you, first of all, one thing that Tom didn't mention about my credentials is that I also do a talk show on Saturday mornings. Some of you may have heard it. Some of you have been on it. It's called The Workers' Beat. It's the only pro-workers radio program anywhere around here for hundreds of miles. So,
Is it at 9 a.m.?
yes, it is at 9 a.m. on KNON 89.3, or it's better to listen on your computer. It's knon.org. Now, this long data is not quite the same for Europe and for the whole world. For Europe and the whole world, inequality was much worse in 1910, and then it falls off starting in 1914. But both of these graphs, in fact, all of the graphs that Piketty makes, show this big dip in inequality in the middle of the 20th century. And the interpretation of that information is what I'm going to disagree with. This is the book that labor looks at mostly. It's called Runaway Inequality. It's by Les Leopold. It's very good, and it's also full of graphs. And a lot of those graphs show the same dip in the middle, not in the middle, no, I'm sorry. They do show inequality, but their graphs, his graphs start in 1970 and shows things getting worse after that. Mr. Leopold and most of the economists on our side, the ones that are on working families side, and all of the labor people use this. And in this book, it only starts there. It starts around 1970 and then shows how inequality has gotten really bad since then. And then it recommends that we try to get back to this, which they consider normal. Back in the old days, in the 50s and 60s, when inequality was not as bad as it is, as it was later. So the way to get back, they say, is to elect good guys. Because what happened, it caused all this inequality according to the labor movement, and most of the people on our side, the bad thing that happened in 1980. And you know what it was and who it was. It wasn't just President Reagan, it was Reaganomics and trickle-down economics and supply-side economics and theories that led to inequality getting much, much worse. But if you're only looking from here up, you're making a mistake.